Good morning and welcome back to the next installment of Coach's Corner. I have lost my trusty assistant, and in his own words, it's because he just didn't love it. Yeah, just didn't love Dad's drawing. So, I lost the best part of the show. That's okay, we'll continue on, press on anyways. So, here's ultimately what we're going to talk about today, is the course of human history and some of the major events that have changed it, human progress, just a general discussion, okay? So what we've done here, I've drawn, or my assistant has drawn this chart. This axis will represent poverty and hunger for humans, and this bottom axis will represent, on both sides, there's another one on the other side, will represent the duration of human history. It does depend on where you go to find this information, but general estimates on our species existence, Homo sapiens, is about 300,000 years of fossilized data. I like to go to Live Science or National Geographic, and you will find a little bit of a nuanced difference no matter where you look as far as the time scale of how long humans have actually been here. But starting from our ancestors, Homo erectus, through the roughly 300,000 years or so of the development, evolution of Homo sapiens, this line represents the normal condition of our species, which is poor and hungry. Almost the entire duration of our species history throughout our evolution has been a low life expectancy, struggle to survive, tribes scraping together enough food and warmth to make it through any given winter, very much like a bear would hibernate today in modern society. It was life expectancy 30-40 years old. Conditions were harsh for humans almost our entire existence until approximately 1800. Again, that year changes a little bit depending on who you ask and what information you're using, what criteria you're using to analyze this. But from about 1800, certainly the Industrial Revolution, an immediate and drastic increase in human progress, the removal, the alleviation of poverty and hunger on a massive global scale. All right. And there are some, I think, a couple of major reasons for that as I flip the chart here. This time scale at the bottom, you can see, goes about 50 years at a time, 1800 through 2000 and just beyond where we are currently. Okay. In 1800, you could read a really, really wonderful book about this called The Alchemy of Air. Scientists met in London and had this major discussion about the future of our species, and there were approximately 1 billion people on the planet at that time. The discussion was about how to survive, and one gentleman in the book introduces this guy in the first chapter, but I forget his name, stood up there and he said the key to humanity's future right now, the most imperative thing, is the development of artificial fertilizer. All right. I don't remember the years, but in the 1700s to 1850s, somewhere within that time frame, there were several different wars over lands across the globe that had an abundance of natural fertilizers, be it manure. The guava wars, literally, I believe it's Chile and Peru, literally countries went to war over an island in the Galapagos because there was enough bat poop to fertilize massive amounts of irrigable of farmland. I'm going to mess that word up, so I'm not going to try to say it again, so I'll tip my tongue. Anyways, so I'd like to, I made a mark on the chart right there for that particular moment because that's when humans first started making a real attempt to develop synthetic fertilizer. Okay, somewhere along and between 1820 and 1840, this process became doable, but not on a mass scale. And it wasn't until Fritz Haber, and I forget the other guy's name, in Germany. It was about 1910 to 1940 when the first mass scale production of artificial fertilizer began to happen, and that happened in the first German factory was in Lunau, if I'm pronouncing that right, and there was another one later in Oppau or something like that. I forget exactly which. It's worth reading this book, by the way. And ultimately what happened there is Hitler and the Nazis, the Socialist Party of Germany, learned real quick that they could make fertilizer explode, because the factory did have some incidents, and there were several kind of accidental incidents that led to the learning of what fertilizer can do other than just feed its people, feed our people. I'd also like to point out the other kind of blip on the radar there that I believe, this is a personal opinion, caused a greater increase and a more rapid scale over modern history within the duration of my lifetime to alleviate more global poverty and hunger, and that's the invention of the internet, which was done by our military, but ultimately it's been left alone. It's been left as a free mechanism for exchange, and what it has become is the greatest entrepreneurial tool in human history. Starting businesses via the internet of all kinds, and then technologies that other humans have figured out, transportation modes and things of that nature, to get those goods and services to the people around the world, has been the single, the most exponentially effective means of alleviating that poverty and hunger. Here's what I'd like to talk about briefly though today. Alright? The 300,000 years or so of human existence produced nothing but poverty and hunger. At the point where we began industrializing, and we see what we know now as modernized or industrialized first world countries, a tiny blip on our species history is the growth of human progress. A teensy fraction. We should consider ourselves so lucky to live in the time that we do because of the struggles that have been there for our species almost the entire existence of our species. Okay? There are some exceptions. After the Industrial Revolution, there have been a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There have been a couple more, but not on the same scale. About 10 to a few more instances where that human progress was not only slowed, but halted and declined on a massive scale. Poverty, hunger, and violence were reintroduced to our species on an exponentially greater scale compared to the general trajectory of human progress from the Industrial Revolution. Those things have something very important in common. Socialism. 1917 to 1922, Lenin and the Red Terror. It's estimated, the documents that we have that you can find online, 28,000 murders, executions on an annual basis, 28,000 of people that Lenin deemed anti-communist or anti-socialist. Okay? Those are political dissenters, anti-socialist people that he had executed. 28,000 per year for the purpose of achieving his utopian socialism. Okay? You see again later, you see 1936, and that was in Ethiopia. Mussolini had his first genocidal experiment. Nearly a decade later, he had another one, and that was basically a 2-year period. Mussolini executed over 300,000 people. Okay, it's important to remember that Mussolini, as a fascist, started out writing socialist columns for the Italian socialist newspaper, the Italian Socialist Party. Mussolini's difference in the vision for socialism was that the world shouldn't have socialism. It was only good enough for Italy. Okay? Mussolini was a socialist, not a fascist. He may have called himself that. His ideas came from socialism. Okay? Then you have in 1939 to 1945, Hitler exterminated 6 million Jews as a part of the Nazi, the German Socialist Workers' Party. Okay, another 6 million via war, which included Russians, Muslims. Although he did side with Muslims because they were anti-Jew, but Hitler was responsible for approximately 12 million unnatural deaths, trying to advance his workers' paradise in various parts of his country, including 2 shared explosions from what he experimented with collective kind of housing and workers arrangements, put labor first kind of deal. Okay, you have 1937 and 38. You have Stalin, who executed 1.2 million as the estimate documented that we have. Opposition members, opponents of socialism. Okay, another 7.5 million under Stalin in that period died as a result of hunger. Something very common in all these instances is the collectivization of peasantry, of work, of farming. It's the collectivization of resources, okay, which is a key component of socialism. The abolition of private property, and the expansion of the collective and the shared resources kind